Hey everyone, it's Amit. So almost every single day you'll come across one or perhaps multiple articles which discusses the dire environment that we are in from a housing perspective, okay? And these articles will cover this topic area from a variety of different angles. Some will talk about why housing is such a lousy investment in this environment. Others will talk about how this housing bubble is going to pop imminently. Others will talk about how millennials are regretting their decision of executing upon a home purchase, and yet others will even draw some semblances or some parallels to the 2007-2008 housing crisis, which is very extreme in my opinion. But at any rate, in this video, what I want to talk about is really three things. What's driving the housing bubble? Is the housing bubble about to pop? And what can you potentially do about it? But before I get too far into it, don't forget to hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to the channel, and let's get cracking. So according to the CoreLogic Case-Shiller index, which is basically a measure for residential home prices have increased significantly over the last year. So since March of 2020 to March of 2021, home prices have gone up by about 13.2%. And even if you were to take into account the drop in prices that may have potentially come with the global health crisis, and you were to look back to March of 2019, you'll still see a substantial increase between that time frame to March of 2021. It's gotten to the point where home prices in March saw the highest growth rate in over 15 years, okay? So then the question becomes, what's driving this ridiculous increase in home prices? So there's lots of reasons for it, okay? Some of which are on the demand side and others are on the supply side. So let's just look at the demand side for a second. There's a significant demand for homes, okay? And this is being driven by the global health crisis as an example, okay? Once people were staying home for incremental periods of time and they found the need to work from home for long hours, they basically realized that they need more space. So this resulted in people exiting the cities and moving to the suburbs, and the demand for suburban homes went through the roof. Another reason why there's a potentially a high demand for homes is largely due to the fact that mortgage rates are so low. I mean, they're very low from historical standards perspective, and for that matter, this has been the case for the last couple of years, okay? Now, even if you look at it from a supply side perspective, okay, there's a limited supply for homes. And the reason for why there's a limited supply for homes is due to a variety of different reasons, okay? For example, when you think about commodities that are used to build a home, such as lumber to build the outside of the home, or copper, which is used to do the wiring of your home. All of these things effectively have gone up in price quite significantly, some of which is driven by the global health crisis, some of which is being driven by labor issues. But at any rate, when you have these incremental input prices in terms of building these homes, fewer builders are willing to do it, definitely on the low end. They're more willing to do it on the high end. And this is largely such that these builders can basically realize a profit margin on it, right? So they're not willing to build smaller homes, or they're not willing to build homes in potentially less desirable areas due to this very fact pattern. Other reasons why there is a reduction in supply of these homes is because even people that are in homes, they're less willing to put their homes up on the market because they don't necessarily know that they're going to potentially be able to find a home that they can desire and potentially afford in this environment, okay? So when you have that type of an activity happening, there's going to be fewer homes that are listed on the market. There's fewer homes that are getting built. The demand for homes is still significantly high, and when you have this demand-supply imbalance, it's basically going to result in home prices going up through the roof. So now that we know that we have got a problem here, right, the question really becomes is this bubble potentially going to pop or not? So undoubtedly, bubble by its very nature, they do pop, right? The question is actually not so much whether they'll pop or not. It's more so, will it pop in the short term, or is it going to pop in the longer term, okay? And is it going to be a complete pop in the bubble, or is it going to be more of a slow release of air, if you will, right? And it'll come down over an extended period of time. So I think in order to understand that or to assess it, we should probably consider some of those demand-supply factors, right? And try to get an assessment on when they may potentially normalize themselves. So take mortgage rates as an example, right? So for all intents and purposes, I think we can reasonably say that that is something that is not going to go up anytime soon, okay? And this is largely due to the fact that the Fed, for all intents and purposes, has already come out and said that they're not going to have some significant adjustment to interest rates anytime soon because they're very interested in unemployment basically coming down substantially. The Fed has also taken a stance that they want to be more reactive in nature, right? They want to basically see what the data shows, and once there's a significant amount of inflation or something else, then they may potentially start raising interest rates. And the Fed has also come out, or the Fed chair has also come out and said that he's not potentially willing to raise interest rates until 2023, and that this whole notion of inflation is potentially transitory. So when you have that type of a fact pattern, I know there's a lot of argument from the marketplace, which is basically that no, the Fed will have to taper a lot sooner than some of these dates are potentially being alluded to. But the fact of the matter remains that it's going to take a while, right? It's going to take a while for a lot of these activities to basically happen. I mean, the Fed is basically going to put some hints out now, then at a certain point in time, they'll potentially say that we're going to be making some of these changes at some point in the future after that. So, if it's going to be a matter of something that is happening imminently or not, that is just not going to be the case. So when it comes to Fed rates and mortgage rates potentially rising, I think we've got a lot more time for something like that potentially transpiring. So the demand is going to continue to be there. Right now, when you have like certain things such as the reopening that is happening across the globe for that matter, there perhaps is going to be a lesser need as offices open up for people to continue to work from home for an extended period of time, which basically means that they're going to have more options. Now, with that said, people have saved a ton of money during the global health crisis as well, okay? So when you have that type of a thing happening where you have so much money, but you also don't necessarily need the space, it potentially creates this notion that people can perhaps wait for some time before they actually have to move into a new home. So when you have those types of activities or phenomena taking place, it basically creates this environment where, yeah, there's going to potentially be some overbidding that happens for people that are definitely or urgently looking for more space, but there's also this environment where potentially people have more time before they essentially need to move and need to buy a place. And the next factor you need to think about is more on the supply side, right? So when it comes about things such as commodity inflation, those lumber prices, those copper prices, which I was referencing earlier. So granted, there's absolutely been a slight decline in lumber prices at this point in time, but with that said, the rise has been so significant over the last year or so, it's going to take some time for these prices to drop to a substantial enough amount such that these home builders can realize a profit on their investment that they're making in building their homes. So this is going to take some time, unless, of course, you have some level of government intervention. And that's not completely unlikely, right? Because the Commerce Secretary, as an example, has basically come out and said that she's willing to at least listen and participate in a conversation on how these lumber prices can potentially be resolved. So when you have rising commodity prices or commodity prices that have not dropped substantially enough, home builders are not going to necessarily build more homes, and then you're going to have this continued demand. So it's going to take quite a while for these home prices to potentially auto-correct themselves. So outside of these factors, you've got other factors that are taking place again as well, which will potentially keep home prices quite elevated for a while, okay? So you've got a growing economy, right? A very strong economy. You've got rising wages, whether government mandated or not. A lot of companies are raising their wages in order to attract talent, okay? So that's going to create an environment where there's more money in people's pockets, and as long as you have more money in people's pockets, they're going to find that need to spend it. Now, some have talked about this semblance to the 2007-2008 housing crisis, and that is completely out of whack, okay? When you have something like that, it basically means that the standards with which lenders have in terms of giving loans out has potentially gone down to those 2007, 2008 levels, which is definitively not the case, okay? So the people that are buying these homes and are potentially getting loans on it at this point in time are definitely good buyers, okay? They're buyers who can basically support this, the charges or the maintenance costs and all of this stuff that is basically associated with buying a home. So what can you do about it, right? So if you're in the market for a home and need to get out of your place and need to move on this whole thing a bit urgently, should you wait it out? And the answer to that is likely no, okay? Assuming, of course, that you can pick up on the costs associated with buying a home, i.e., your down payment, your maintenance costs, homeowners association fees, whatever, taxes, all of that good stuff. If you can pay off all of that and are planning on staying in that home for 5, 7, potentially even 10 years, then there's no reason to potentially hold off on buying a home, because who knows how long it's going to take for this whole thing to auto-correct. But if you do not have that level of urgency in buying a home, then perhaps it's a good idea to wait it out just a little bit longer. Now, in terms of determining how much of a home you can afford, I did a video on that earlier, so I'll leave a link for that up above as well as in the description below, so definitely go ahead and check that out as well. Now, if if you are one of those folks who's actually going to go about buying a home, just know that there is this significant demand supply imbalance. Okay, so you're going to need to be very aggressive when it comes to actually winning the home that you actually want to live in. Okay, so this could take multiple different forms, but you should be prepared to potentially outbid your competitors, if you will, and come in significantly over the price that the property is potentially being listed at. In addition to that, you may be able to be sort of creative in the way you're making your offer. You may have to include various contingencies or exclude various contingencies, such as homeowners inspections. You may have to put some clauses where the seller of the property can potentially stay in that property for an extended period of time, even after you've bought it. You'll need to come up with very creative ways such that you can basically separate yourself from all the competitors, because this demand supply imbalance is going to create a significant amount of an issue if you're going in straight with a regular offer in terms of winning that place. What are your thoughts in this matter? Are you thinking that we're potentially headed for a massive collapse? And if you are in that vein, include those in the reasons in the comments below. So I hopefully you enjoyed the contents of this video, especially if you stayed around till the very end. Definitely don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.